welcome to Strange Coordinates, the show where we use brands as roadmaps to arrive at utterly surprising places. I am Robert Bela.
And I'm Topher Burns. Along with our partner Idan, Robert and I lead an advertising agency called Territorial. We help brands to find their place in the world by exploring how history, culture, and desire reveal insights about what is cool about being human.
Yeah, and that's really basically the premise for this podcast. So every episode, one of us gives the other a brand to explore, and that person has to kind of trek off into their intellectual wilderness and come back with a story about that brand or stories that they find to be the most compelling. Those could be fun, they could be culturally related, they could be historically grounded. It's really all about using brands as compass points to discover more about the world around us. And Topher, today I'm feeling nostalgic. I'm catching those 2009 feelings right now.
Okay, so we're feeling sort of like post Y2K.
Yeah, we're talking Kanye at the VMAs.
Oh,
we're talking Sully Sullenberg on the Hudson River.
Miracle on the Hudson.
Miracle on the Hudson. We got Barack Obama in the White House.
Ugh, halcyon days indeed.
Right. You got Avatar on the big screen. You got Jersey Shore on the small screen. And
it wasn't all good, I guess.
Well, you know, and in my back pocket, you've got a BlackBerry. And that's what I want to talk about today. You've really provided me with the opportunity to spend some time in 2009 again. Because this week, we are talking about BlackBerry.
We are. Indeed, we are. And it feels, we haven't spent we haven't done a lot of personal tech, like we haven't done consumer tech. And I don't know, I just I thought it's the right level. I don't know, I just thought you'd have fun with it. That it was the right level of nostalgia. It's not like we're, doing a Palm Pilot. It's not like we're doing... like a Mac LC2. I'm not asking you to do an Abacus.
Yeah.
There's a BlackBerry-ness in the air, I think, these days that people are interested in.
There is. And, like I said, it gave me a chance to kind of revisit a time in my life or revisit a time in our history. 2009, I think it was a relatively newly minted creative director at Ogilvy. I actually had a BlackBerry and an iPhone, just sort of rocking them both.
Sure.
Traveling, for shoots. There's pictures of me and my partner at the time doing the BlackBerry prayer, sort of in the corner of the shoot, just huddled over our BlackBerries. And it was a really, really important part of my overall kind of career growth. Did you ever have BlackBerry when you were at
I had a BlackBerry Pearl, so I had the little
of course she did.
trackball thing.
She loves a fancy thing.
It was the first one I got, and I actually bought it used, I remember. It was I think I found it on Craigslist. And it was I felt really cool for sure. Because before that it was just kind of texting, and then phones were just trying to figure out how to internet on your phone, but it was really strange and awkward. And the leap from BlackBerry to smartphone for me was pretty brief. I wouldn't say that I spent that much time in a BlackBerry world. I kind of delayed getting the BlackBerry, got the BlackBerry, and then very swiftly jumped over to an actual touchscreen phone.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to think. I had the Motorola flip phone.
Well, that's a good one.
The two-way one, the one you could flip up a...
You love a tactile, manipulatable, a phone you can bend around.
Yeah. I always felt official, closing it, opening it, pop, pop. Got something to do.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're familiar with the BlackBerry because we lived it. For the children, if you will, Topher, can you maybe just tell the listeners who may not have experienced the BlackBerry, tell them a little bit about this device. What made it special? What was so cool about it?
I would say the appeal was internet on your phone and mostly email machine that you could carry around. So it was kind of email was starting to become where a lot of business was done.
Right.
We had phones that increasingly were having data like things. So we weren't just calling and texting. They were starting to be able to do some stuff. So mobile was just in its infancy, but mainly the thing that BlackBerry felt like the innovation on was you can get an email, and you can send an email, but you won't be like right by your computer when that happens. And so the like picture of you being on a shoot and having a BlackBerry is like very much the thing I felt that was like the proposition for BlackBerry was like, do you business and do you business in places that aren't your desk? Like now you can business in those places too.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was kind of like, that was the proposition.
It was just too much business. So to be honest, looking back, we sort of gave it up then. We were just like, so just give me business all the time. And that
all
was
the
just,
time.
I think that was a bad idea, but you nailed it. The key really was being able to connect to enterprise mail servers through a mobile device. And that was one of the big innovations that BlackBerry brought. Also the QWERTY keyboard, the full-size QWERTY keyboard. Prior to the BlackBerry, we were using the T9, which was basically using the numbers of a keypad to equate the letters. So you'd have to
Which I remember I was really fast
my God, I was
at.
crushing it on the Nokia.
I could do that without looking at it too. So I could have it kind of like under the table. So like in high school, if I was like sending a text to somebody, I could bang the whole thing out while looking like I'm paying attention.
Totally. Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, then so you get this little keyboard that you're like, I can just fly on this. And the reason I started us into 2009 is because 2009 is the year that BlackBerry actually held the highest percentage of the U.S. smartphone market. So in 2009, it had 56% of the entire U.S. smartphone market. There was a massive global presence as well. So it really was the like high water mark for BlackBerry. By 2013, 4 years later, that percentage had shrunk to the single digits, which is incredible.
Yeah.
Listen, the story of BlackBerry's rise and fall is really well documented. It's been covered in many other places, including a movie in 2023 that starred Glenn Howerton from Always Sunny and Jay Baruchel from Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon. That shows you my references. And it gives a really exaggerated and exciting account of that story. So we don't really need to go in there. And that's really not where we want to spend our time on Strange Coordinates. I like Mark Antony, or rather the inverse of Mark Antony. I come to praise BlackBerry, not to bury it. I am here to sing its praises.
I thought we were going to be like, I need to know.
Oh, yeah.
I need to know. I thought there's like that Mark Antony.
Oh, man, I love that Mark Antony. So we're here not to stomp on BlackBerry's grave, but to look at the ways in which BlackBerry has had an indelible impact on where we are now. Because I think that we are actually living today in the world that BlackBerry created.
Okay.
So you don't seem blown away by this. You seem like this is a plausible theory.
What?
Are you dubious? Do you find this?
Let's go backwards. What the fuck are you talking about? You shut your blasphemous mouth.
Just close the computer, walk off. Yes.
I am appalled.
It comes down to three things. So we're going to talk about this in kind of three chapters. The first, three different areas of impact. The first is technological, obviously. The second would be cultural. And the third one I'm just sort of calling psychological.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I want to kind of like explore the legacy of BlackBerry through those three lenses. So let's just start with technology first. BlackBerry obviously was first and foremost a technology breakthrough. As we mentioned, it was the first device really to offer mobile access to email. It had physical properties that were new for the space. It was really, the classic story of an engineer attacking an obscure problem and creating a breakthrough. So like technology really is at the core of what BlackBerry brought to the world. And the list of things that we owe to the BlackBerry that we sort of take for granted now in the world of devices and in general kind of information access and information technology is pretty extensive. So the first is the idea of push email. So seems really silly. Of course your email comes to you, but that's actually not the case. It didn't always come to you.
Right.
You used to have to go and access it. and go like say, hey, do I have an email? It's like walking to the mailbox and looking inside of it. You had to do this. BlackBerry actually created the technology that allows emails to be pushed to your inbox without having to manually refresh them. So that was a huge thing. And you can already see the implications of that.
Totally. Yeah. Just the difference between wanting to discover some information and the information finding you is just like such a huge paradigm shift.
It's a huge paradigm shift. And then that was kind of coincided with the sort of the explosion of sort of the notification. So BlackBerry had the little notification display, little LED that was like a visual cue that told you that you had a thing to look at. It's a big thing. The Apple Watch vibrating on your wrist is a descendant of that. So like we're living in that world. The idea of a unified inbox. So like BlackBerry brought together emails, text, and everything to tell you these are all the things that you have to look at. So the notification center on our phones now is the inheritor of that. Mobile messaging, before there was WhatsApp, before there was iMessage, there was BBM, which was like a really direct person-to-person messaging. Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, BBM was basically, and you remember you had to have a PIN. You had to give somebody else your PIN so they could actually find you, which is the clunkiest way of doing it. But
right.
Yeah.
But it did feel kind of like cool. Like it was like
Totally.
trading business cards with somebody.
It was.
You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like you're like, hey, I'd like to hang out and potentially date you. You know what I mean? It wasn't that at all. But it was like, hey, like, let's network. You know?
Yeah, totally.
You know?
Totally. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
And there's some people who can still remember their BlackBerry PIN. I can't. I could not remember, but some people just like, bam, they're just on it.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I just didn't have it long enough for that to be meaningful. And I think also it wasn't really a point of like, it didn't have any cachet by the time I got a BlackBerry. But, you know, in like 2004, if you were like a Wall Street trader, that you know, your number was probably like, it was probably like having a 212 area code number, you know, like just having to know what it was. So BlackBerry Messenger was huge. End-to-end encryption that was invented and created by BlackBerry.
Wow.
The notion of thumbing, creating keyboards that are ergonomically designed for thumbs, introduced again by BlackBerry. And then data compression. It seems silly. Like they found out a way to efficiently handle data across weak networks, and this is really the enabler of everything from, you know, kind of streaming to increased internet search traffic and things like that. So like really, really big innovation, calendar syncing, and then over-the-air updates. That didn't exist. So your phone did not automatically update before BlackBerry invented that. A lot of like really fundamental things that needed to be invented that we didn't know needed to be invented, but were invented, and then have actually had these incredible lasting impacts on how we look at technology. And so obviously a piece of tech that was as influential as the BlackBerry is going to have a long-lasting impact on technology. And at its height, I think BlackBerry's cultural impact was as significant as its technical one, as its technological one. And I wouldn't, it's not quite the culture-shaping behemoth that Apple would become, the iPhone in particular. But there were, parts of the aughts culture over which BlackBerry had a huge impact and influence that were incredibly important for constructing today's reality. And creating what is, sort of a somewhat an unsatisfying experience that we're having now. So I want to dig into some of those things. And the parts of culture that BlackBerry really had a huge sway over were politics and finance. Okay. So let's start with finance. BlackBerry's ubiquity in the financial sector by the mid-aughts was really no accident. And we always associate the BlackBerry in early stages with the Wall Street trader, the financial person, the entrepreneur. BlackBerry pursued a really deliberate strategy of seeding where they basically gave out the device free to high-level financial executives.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And we're like, basically like, okay, now that you can get email all the time, you're going to send email all the time, and everybody who works underneath you is going to have to live in that world or they're not going to get promoted.
Yeah.
That's cruel.
So forcing,
That's so cruel.
yeah, forcing like organizational behavioral shifts. Also, a kind of top-down technology structure. So previously, like your CIO would be the one who would say, okay, we're gonna get Dell computers this year. We're gonna do this. But now the CEO goes to the CIO and says, hey, I've got this amazing device. You need to make this work on our system. So like enforcing, tech adoption at that level, and then just kind of creating, a sense of envy amongst the sort of striving subordinates. The boss has this, I want to have it too.
Yeah.
Work like gangbusters. BlackBerry really became synonymous with those high-flying wheeling and dealing days of that post 9/11 Wall Street. It was clipped to every trader's hip, and really, as you said, really enabled them to do business no matter where they were and no matter what time of day it was. And I think, for an industry that was built on this idea of risk-taking, that had a kind of built-in crisis mindset, the shooting from the hip approach became literal now that they had the BlackBerry there. And so BlackBerry behavior got so bad in the mid-2000s that there were several executives who had to sort of publicly, consciously decouple with their BlackBerry. Like, this truly, truly happened. So let me give you some examples.
Okay, yeah.
So you've got Dick Fold, who was the CEO of Lehman Brothers. He admitted to being, addicted to his BlackBerry and to Brick Breaker, the game on the BlackBerry in particular, and so much so that he had to have the game uninstalled in 2007.
Because he was just addicted to Words with Friends, basically. But like,
yeah, basically, just like going, and 2007 was a pretty momentous time, as we all know. Likewise, Lloyd Blankfein, who was the CEO of Goldman Sachs, he was known as one of the street's biggest BlackBerry addicts, and he had to kind of publicly renounce the BlackBerry.
Whoa.
And sort of shift his mindset from the sort of constant feedback loop of the trader that he was getting from the BlackBerry to I've got to be the CEO and think about how am I going to apply vision to the company.
So both of these people. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, ask. Go.
So both
please.
of these people. Was there a reason they needed to quit? What did they say besides I'm spending too much time on it?
It was, and we're going to get into this a little bit later, but it was a bit of a cultural moment where it was acknowledged that there was something happening with the BlackBerry, and this behavior also was new in the world of relatively early in the world of phones and phone etiquette. And so, the idea of people using their device that frequently was just unheard of. And so it was just this kind of disruptive thing that people just really, and we'll talk about that as we get into the kind of third layer of impact, that psychological impact.
Okay.
But you had these two people, CEO of Lehman Brothers, CEO of Goldman Sachs. You also had the CEO of MF Global, who was John Corzine. He was actually known to kind of leave meetings, run out of the room, check his BlackBerry really quick, make a trade, jump back into a meeting, and continue. So you had all these behavior, and then these names may sound familiar to you: Lehman Brothers, right. Goldman Sachs, MF Global.
Yeah.
And anyone who lived through the 2008 financial crisis kind of knows those names. They're emblazoned on your in your brain because they were the critical moments. I mean, MF Global was a little bit later. It was 2010 when it faced bankruptcy.
Yeah.
But it was kind of the last gasp of that era. So I'm not saying that BlackBerry caused the 2008 financial crisis, but I'm not saying it because I do think that you had this sort of innate risk-taking culture that was utterly magnified by the accessibility and the immediacy of having basically your entire office in the palm of your hand.
Mm-hmm. And maybe it also, I could imagine it gives you a sense of overconfidence.
Right.
You think you know more than you do, or you think you can control more than you can because, like you said, you've got if you have that feeling you're having your whole company in your pocket, then maybe besides the risk stuff, maybe you're also, besides risk aptitude, maybe you're also just outside of the aptitude part, just really bad at assessing risk in general because you just have these blind spots.
And like all kinds of workflows were completely reinvented, you know.
Right.
All types of things
You could
were
get
just
approvals
utterly
so
disruptive.
quickly.
Yeah, and I think like I can't prove this. This is just a theory, but the timing is rather suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, like to think about the financial crisis, it's it really realigned American culture in so many ways. Like if you think about it, the rise of populism, both on the left and on the right. So on the left with Occupy Wall Street, and on the right with the Tea Party. Those are both connected to the financial crisis, and that populist upswell is really connected and critical to where we are today in 2026. Likewise, the affordability crisis, particularly around housing that we're living through right now, has its roots in the financial collapse and the foreclosure wave that followed in its wake. A lot of foreclosed houses were bought up by equity firms that created scarcity. We have a housing crisis. This is all kind of connected to where we are right now. So it was a really key moment of shifting culture into a direction that we're just starting to really kind of feel, not just starting to, we're really in the middle of feeling the effects of. And I think you could argue that maybe it's BlackBerry's connection to political events that has had an even more direct bearing on the state of the world today. And so, Topher, do you remember an enterprising young chap named Edward Snowden?
Sure.
Yeah, so Edward Snowden was a contractor at the NSA. This is like in the 2010s, around 2013. And he leaked information basically that kind of revealed the scale of global and domestic surveillance. Do you have what do you remember about that kind of the Snowden episode, the Snowden leaks?
I mean, I think it was an era when the capability of grabbing and sharing information was larger than the institutional concepts, practices, and habits of how to retain and suppress it. And so it was this like unique moment in time when like anything from personal information up to like national government secrets all kind of felt like they were like discoverable and knowable because everybody had already agreed we should be sharing these things, and we were starting to realize that those were helpful to have the information move really fast, but we hadn't quite figured out the security stuff. And so you could just go and people who had access to stuff could go and just like download it and then send it somewhere. And there were whole areas of the internet that were so dedicated towards information freedom, and that like we were still torrenting things at the time, there were people that was like, you should be able to get a CD wherever you want and a movie wherever you want. And so there was also WikiLeaks,
Totally.
And it just like the ability to just kind of like get whatever information you wanted from anywhere. I'm sure reporters were having just like a wonderful, wonderful time before like the bottom fell out of the industry. Information was flowing faster than it was being controlled, and I don't think that that's the case now today. But we lived through a time when you just like, if you wanted to know something, you kind of could.
Totally, yeah. Like basically, there were a ton of revelations in his leaks. Basically, he showed the scale of that government surveillance had reached post 9/11. So a lot of this was ushered in by the Patriot Act here domestically. But it was happening everywhere. It was happening in Britain. It was happening in the Gulf states and in Saudi Arabia. And he kind of pulled back the curtain on all that. And amongst those revelations, there were some that were directly related to BlackBerry. I don't know if you remember this, and it kind of escaped my attention at the time as well. But it was revealed that both the NSA in the United States and the GCHQ, which is the UK's version of the NSA, which is essentially an information and gathering secret agency, they were both able to hack into the BlackBerries of foreign diplomats, and they did so on many occasions.
Okay.
So this was a huge one. They did so to the president of Brazil. This is before Lula. They had at major conferences, they were just listening to and reading people's BlackBerries. And it was not only like a massive breach of diplomatic trust, but it was also, went right at one of the things from a brand perspective that BlackBerry had built their brand on. They said, even we can't see your data was one of their famous lines. Well, apparently the NSA could.
Right.
So BlackBerry is sitting here at the heart of this major revelation. And the financial crisis, the Snowden leaks unified really disparate parts of culture. They kind of like gave all of the deep state freaky deakies on both ends of the political spectrum all the fodder that they needed to say, like, see, I told you they were listening. So like that, that moment really started to feed kind of fringe obsessions, that were happening kind of at the political fringes with this sort of validation that the deep state was real. And this kind of leads us to obsessions like QAnon, Pizzagate, all these things that have actually shaped politics today. And they've also further fueled that populist shift that we talked about just a second ago when it comes to the financial crisis. So you've got this sort of like, I'm not saying BlackBerry was malicious in any of these events, but its centrality, its sort of Zelig-like nature sitting at the center of all these critical things is really kind of hard to ignore. And there's one more that I think really kind of puts this in perspective. So around the same time as the Snowden leaks, 2012, 2013, there was this internet meme phenomenon called Texts from Hillary. Do you remember Texts from Hillary?
Is that like where she's got like bit shades on and she's like looking at her phone and then it's like whatever she's saying?
Yeah, exactly. It's right. It was based on this photograph that appeared of then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who was on a military plane headed for Libya. And she was wearing sunglasses and she was looking at her BlackBerry and everyone was like, oh my God, that is the height of badass. I mean, like some people did. Not everybody.
Like,
you apparently were not.
Queen bitch. She was handling her shit. Yeah.
She was, And then like it was like hot. People were so into it. Turns out that, the meme lords and ladies weren't the only ones who went wild for that image. So not only did that BlackBerry-laden photo kick off like a meme revolution, it also served as the impetus for the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails.
Right.
And what happened was basically a State Department official who was in charge of public records kind of saw this viral image, and he's like, I know that when she came into office, she didn't have an official account, but I wonder if she's using it now. She's obviously on a BlackBerry. That doesn't seem right. And so looked into it. And the rest is this sort of turd lasagna of overreacting hypocrisy that continued really unabated, literally till the like election eve 2016.
Yeah. And nowadays we just do it all on WhatsApp groups.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But like, this was the start. BlackBerry literally in that image, because she was on a BlackBerry, not a government sanctioned phone, somebody decided to look into that, and that started this whole thing. And so I'm not saying that BlackBerry is responsible for Trump and the hellscape that he's visited upon this world, but I'm not saying it because the but her emails shit literally happened up until the evening of the election and basically disqualified her. We can discuss in maybe another podcast whether or not we think she should have been a candidate or president in any event, but I'd certainly think avoiding Trump's entry onto the government stage would have been preferable to literally almost anything.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got technological impact, we've got cultural impact, and then lastly, I just want to look at the final way that we're just BlackBerry girls living in a BlackBerry world, and that is really having to do with human psychology. So particularly the way in which modern tech products engage and in many ways entrap human psychology and the human psyche. So we talked earlier about those high-powered execs who struggled to regulate their BlackBerry usage. But in reality, it was really an epidemic that swept beyond the corner offices of Wall Street firms. So much so that BlackBerry was actually given the nickname Crackberry.
Yeah.
Do you remember hearing Crackberry?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And what's your guess on the year that Crackberry was the word?
Maybe like I don't know, oh 08.
Interesting. Yeah, I would have said a little bit later, but it was actually 2006. It was actually named the
Okay.
word of the year
Okay.
by the Webster's New World College Dictionary, and it beat out the term Googling
Oh,
that year. Yeah, which tells you just so much about that era. Imagine like all the new stimulus
yeah.
people were getting.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
had a device in their hand that was actually kind of like giving them information at a rate that they'd never experienced before. They had been so familiar with turning to the internet for information that there was a new word invented for it.
Yeah.
Googling, like it's crazy. Like that's an insane shift in human behavior.
Yeah. It feels,
So
I like, it's hard for me to imagine not going through that and also not be like, in a time of enormous personal change at the same time. Like,
yeah,
as all this was happening, like all of this sort of happened between when I like started, maybe like was like starting to leave high school through to entering the workforce. And so in some ways it just like kind of,
right.
it wasn't,
It just felt like
there was so much
felt like
changing
growing up.
anyways. Yeah,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
exactly.
I was
Yeah.
like learning how to do research reports. So
Yeah.
obviously like learning to do them on the internet wasn't like that big of a deal because I didn't have like a big, 5-year long developed microfiche habit. You know what I mean? Like I hadn't created
You
the
didn't have to snap that one.
yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't have to I didn't have to relearn other things. Like
Yeah.
learning corporate culture was learning email culture for me at a
Right.
time when email culture was developing. And so like it's kind of you're underscoring like as you were talking about the timing and stuff like that. I was just like I can't imagine having had another habit and then having to learn all of this crap. Because instead I was just like, yeah, it's email, like I
Yeah,
was just
right,
kind of
totally.
like, that's what I'm learning is part of a job, like it wasn't a different thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Yeah, and it's like I think of it also in terms of like like in the colonial era when products from the New World started to be shipped back to Europe, there was three things that were shipped back that were insanely addictive. Like cheap sugar in huge quantities, tobacco,
Yeah.
and coffee.
Yeah. Right.
And like the world just got this injection of all this like these stimulants.
Right.
And like we had the Renaissance, like all this crazy shit just started.
Right,
happening.
right,
But, like, we had this like 10-year, 20-year injection of data
Yeah.
and information.
Yeah.
Like that just like flooded our behaviors, flooded our every like interactions, flooded our both professional and private interactions. Like it's amazing,
Yeah.
but it's also like intense.
Yeah.
Okay, so the crackberry phenomenon. So 2006, word of the year. So it was really already well established by the mid 2000s. And listen, we all know that we just talked about it. There have been addictive consumer products before. We know that this is like the idea of a consumer product that you get addicted to is not a new thing. But the idea of the crackberry and what that represents, I think actually was kind of a new thing in the world. It was never really experienced in that way from a consumer product. It goes back to some shifts in behavioral thinking and some shifts in psychology. Have you ever heard of a Skinner box? Do you know what a Skinner
Of
box
course.
is?
I was a
Okay, you
psychology major.
Oh, of course. Okay, tell me a little bit about this. What the Skinner box represents in terms of like the notion of conditioning.
Sure. So Skinnerian psychology in general is based around the concept of like behavior and reward. So it's around reward systems. And the theory is centered around the fact that like animals pursue implement behaviors that result in them getting rewards. So Skinnerian research is a lot of like training rats to do things in order to get things. And the classic is you like press a lever and you get a like pellet of food.
Yeah.
So the like thing that they started training was like what makes a rat press the lever the most?
Right.
Is it always getting the food? And
Yes.
the thing is no. The thing that makes the rat press the lever constantly is if you press the lever and sometimes you get the food and sometimes you don't. So like predictability of rewards is actually inversely related to the implementation of the behavior, which is why addiction, why gambling, why toxic phone addiction.
Totally. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much. You saved me a few paragraphs of notes to kind of summarize. That's great. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So the unpredictable nature of the reward incites the brain to become obsessed with the possibility of it.
Yeah.
And that is really powerful. And that kind of unpredictability was given a name. Is called the variable ratio schedule. And conditioning via a variable ratio schedule is one of the keys to understanding the addictive nature of the BlackBerry. And I think we'll probably establish every technology since then.
Yeah.
So we talked about the BlackBerry inventing push emails, right? So it had push emails, and then it signaled to you that a new message had arrived with this bright little red light shining on the device. Could be important.
Right.
Could be spam. You don't really know, so you better check and see. So this was the start of a reaction and relationship to the device that feels very much like the Skinnerian approach.
I always had a theory too that like there's two problems. The reason it's so addictive is because there are two embedded types of connected behaviors that are happening there. One is that like you don't get a blip at a predictable time. So it's not like every day on the hour you get a blip, so you know it's happening and you know when it's not happening. So like some days you don't get a blip, and then other days you get lots of blips. So like even just the stimulus of like the receiving mail is unpredictable. And then the irregularity of what the thing is. It's junk mail sometimes, a lot of times.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's shitty emails you don't want to get. And then sometimes it's really fun news. And so you're like combining two things that are like as if you were giving the rat not just infrequent, unpredictable pellets, but that sometimes the pellets were bitter and awful or lacked nutrition, and then sometimes they were full of honey. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like it's super unpredictable, and so you just can't help but like wait for the next one because you really hope it's coming, and then you really hope it's going to be good.
If you read there's some like news articles where people are kind of commenting on the crackberry phenomenon at the time. And, there are people like, oh, it's just like being a chocoholic. Meanwhile, there's like, signs of imminent social contagion everywhere. But like, oh, it's nothing. It's
so
fine.
People weren't jacked into the idea that this is just a fucking casino yet.
No, they were like, well, like somebody was saying, well, yes, somebody's on their phone at an event, but 2-3 years ago, they wouldn't have been able to be at that event at all. And you're like, okay. So it's really, really fascinating and interesting. And I think to put this in perspective, we may think this sounds like innocuous, right? Of course you get notifications. Why wouldn't you get notifications? Like, also, weren't we getting notifications from our cell phones before that? This is 2006. Just to put this in perspective, Facebook didn't even have a mobile app until 2008.
Yeah.
And it was kind of garbage at the time.
Yeah.
So like, this is like early days of just kind of jacking people with this information.
It looks so quaint now when you imagine somebody like opening up their laptop and being like, gotta check my Facebook. Did I get a message? But like Jake and I met on a dating app that was entirely like non-mobile. Like we were on OkCupid, and so it was just like you would get a message, and if you didn't check your messages, it was kind of like that's it. So you just had to like go home and be like, wonder if anybody wanted to go on a date. Like, let's see, let me log in and remember my password. You know what I mean? Like it was like it's so pen pally in a way that now just like is almost incomprehensible.
Well, it's also, I think, like data was location based, and I don't mean like the way we think about it now. I think like for the longest time, data was in a library. It was in a book. You had to go to that thing to get it. You had to go to it, and then there was a transition period as we started to get digital data. Like you at least had to go to your computer. You had to access the internet through a place. because it was there. That's how you got to it. And then, mobile just totally transformed that. We didn't go to data anymore. It just was kind of coming to us constantly.
There was an interesting little period in time where you didn't have mobile data. So like to your point, you still had to go to the information. The information wouldn't come to you. And there was this service called Tango. Did you ever use that?
Oh, why does that sound so familiar?
It was a
What was Tango?
texting service. And you would text a question to Go Tango or whatever. There would be a person on the other end that would receive this and then Google it for you. And then they would summarize what they found.
I totally remember.
And then they would send it back to you. And so like it was kind of the beginning of the end of what I feel like is one of the most fun social phenomenons that now will never ever happen again unless you're like camping, which is somebody being like, hey, remember XYZ thing? And the person's like, that's not the correct thing. It's actually this. And the other person's like, no, it happened in this year. And you're like, no, it happened in this year. Like, this person was the actor. No, this person was the actor. Those are fun, pointless fights that I just love. Like, I love petty, just people digging in. And then, like, immediately becomes ad hominem, right? Like, you're not, no longer are you saying, like, no, I believe it was in 1982 that song came out. You're like, you've always been stupid. Yeah.
You should.
Hey, remember when
they let you drive?
Yeah, remember when you dated that person who cheated on you and they were smarter than you? Like, it just gets really, really mean. And I love those types of conversations. And you can't have them anymore. Because the person's like, I think it was 1982. And the other person's like, it was 84. And then that's the end of the thing. There's no more fun to be had. And that like Tango thing was right in the middle of it where you could be like, okay, I will use one of my texts.
Let's let Carol at Tango.
Yeah. But like you had a finite. You had to care about it enough because you're like, I only get so many texts per month or whatever. I'll use one of them to text this place where there's somebody in a data center sitting in front of a computer who's going to Google the information for me. And I'll have to trust them that they're going to come back with like the right information.
Yeah, totally. That's amazing. That's totally amazing.
As you can imagine, that was the beginning of a tech empire for Tango. They're still around.
Yeah, for sure. They are
really durable premise of a business.
What was the Deliver Anything company? Early days, like in the late 90s, earlier 2000s.
I don't know.
It was called oh crap. I forget. Damn it.
Time to text Tango.
Yeah, text Tango now. Okay, so it's funny you say that about those like silly little moments of disagreement that are actually like really rich.
Yeah.
There'll be times when that'll happen and somebody will reach to their phone and I'll say like, no, we just need to use our inner Googles this time. We're just going to use inner Google only, no outer Google. Just use what's in there already. It's in there floating around.
Yeah.
And let's just see what we remember.
Yeah.
Okay, so
this is why you get invited to so many people's personal homes.
Oh, that's right, exactly. So I think we can all agree that in some ways we're kind of basically living in a Skinner box right now.
Jamming on the lever,
just wanging down on that lever. Yeah. And then it's been like super optimized too. You like the infinite scroll of social media is just a limitless instance of variable ratio scheduling. Like the next post is going to be interesting. Nope, the next one's going to be interesting. Yeah. And then, we're getting notifications from like dozens of apps at a time, not just one little red light saying, hey, you might have an email. So it's just sort of like, whoa, overwhelmingly how much we've just kind of like put ourselves in this little conditioning contraption. I think there's probably an interesting side conversation to explore here as we're talking about addiction and how products can sponsor that, around the fine line between brand or product loyalty and addiction. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was thinking about that. Like, there was a moment where BlackBerry had like, you would have been like, this is like brand loyalty. These people love this product. This is amazing. We did it, guys. And then it sort of transitioned into like, whoa, that's psychological addiction.
Yeah.
Like, whoops.
That took a while though. I mean, I was listening to an interview with the guy who created Marvel Snap.
Yeah.
And the person interviewing him was like, listen, like I spend an insane amount of time playing your game. Like I almost don't like it. Like I'm on it so often. It's just like, and ask the creator, how do you think about sort of like, you know, the features that you release that bring people to the product more, that, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And overall, it was like a really fawning interview. And so when they asked this question, I was like, all right, finally, like something, you know? And the guy was like, well, we don't like to talk about it as, you know, addicting or anything. That's not what we're about. We think about features as if they're sticky. And it was like, did you, like, you just used it. He didn't, it was just like, how did you, you were like, well, we don't like to use that word, but you definitely jam on all of that.
Yeah.
You know, all of those emotional levers, and we just call it something else. And so I can sleep at night. So like the unexamined life is wonderful for me. So because I'm rolling in cash. So
sticky like cooked heroin.
Yeah,
sticky like
exactly.
like a crack rock that's melted.
Yeah, exactly. Like that sweet fifth pour of scotch at 11 in the morning. You know, just like, exactly. Good God. I don't know. I remember hearing that, and I just like ended the interview. I was like, this is gross. This is so gross. Like, everybody knows they're doing it, and like that's the thing. I think that like when you're talking about kind of like, it seems plausible to me that you could be working at BlackBerry and you could be looking at behavioral data and you could be hearing people talk about things, and you really would be just like, wow, people just really go bananas for this BlackBerry thing. They just love us, you know, like and I could see it. I could see how you could live in that brand, in that world, and just be like, this is great. We're giving the people what they want, you know, in a way that I just don't think is like conscionable now. And so like, that's why I just think like people that work in these worlds and engineer these systems, specifically when it relates to like user behavior and like optimizing things like time on site and like amount of times spent in the product, just like, you know what you're doing. You've chosen to be okay working at RJ Reynolds, and that's fine. It's, you know, not good for the people you're making the thing for. So you need to be okay with that. And I think that's a thing that like at the BlackBerry level, they didn't really have to contend with yet, because they had no concept of what they were doing.
They really, like the person I referenced who was saying, it's like being a chocoholic, was like the head of marketing at Research in Motion. It's just like in an article from 2006, and he was just like, no, it's, you know, they just love our stuff, you know. That's like they're talking about Garfield and lasagna,
right.
It's like, no, it was the sort of the first dawning of a thing that would irrevocably shape culture forever globally. And he's like, you know, they just got a little fix for our stuff, you know.
yeah. It's that smooth, rich flavor.
No, it's crazy. It's so crazy, and I think that like, you know, that I just keep thinking about what is that threshold. You're like, yes, we want emotional attachment. A brand wants emotional attachment. They want you to feel an emotional connection to them, almost an emotional addiction. But as soon as it translates or transfers into like a physical or a neurological need, then it becomes like a little bit of a danger zone, right? And like I find that a really interesting.
It's interesting because
interesting frontier.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, we talk about like our entire lives in advertising and branding. We've talked about something like consumer needs, you know?
Yeah, right.
And when we talk about them at the dinner table with other people, we're like, well, we call them consumer needs, but it's not like a need, you know what I mean? It's like a thing that you really want to solve, but it isn't like a chemical addiction. You'll talk about a consumer need as being like, oh, I want to buy, I want my dog to be able to be like more entertained, but like I'm not at home all the time. And so like that's the consumer need, is like my dog gets bored, which is not a chemical dependency.
No.
You know, that's just like it would be better for my dog if they were a little bit more entertained during the day when I can't take care of them. And like we call those consumer needs because we like to really isolate exactly the thing that we're trying to solve. What's the pain point we're trying to solve? But like, to your point now, consumer needs are like, oh, people are like neurologically addicted to our platform. We have spent the past 10 to 15 years reshaping their brains, their relationships, their understanding of the truth, and the way that they interact with society, such that actually, like, we have created an actual physical mental dependency.
Indeed, yeah. Yeah, it's wild. It's crazy. I mean, you don't see anybody like, "Hey, man, I gotta get my whites more white," like scratching.
Right. There are a few people like that, but then we get them medicated,
Yeah, exactly. Well, I want to just bring it all home, Topher. Like, we started on something of a nostalgic journey, but it really ended up kind of being about the present in a lot of ways, and I think that's something that is different for us with BlackBerry. We've looked at a lot of brands in the past, but I think this is the first time that a brand that has effectively been dead for over a decade has shown to be so, like, in some ways painfully relevant to our day to day. Like, it is really deeply connected still to, like, a lot of what we're experiencing on personal, professional, political, societal, cultural levels. So I appreciate you setting this journey up for us. I think it was a really fun one for me, and hopefully it was fun for you too.
I did. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think one of the things that really, like, sticks with me as I think about this is, in some ways, how quaint it seems to consider a device and its impact on us, because we're just in such a software world now, I think the idea that something that I could physically buy that's wrapped in plastic, and that would be the thing that is determining my relationship with work or enabling me to do new things, like, I guess I just, like, haven't had that excitement over a device that much, like, it just, like, so rarely happens. Like, I guess now, like, wearables are kind of a little bit of that. So, like, when I get a new running watch, I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like, it's gonna change how I interact with the world around me. Or, like, I don't know. I just, like, I really can't think of anything else where I'm, like, buying a piece of, like, physical touchable tech and that being a thing that's a paradigm shift for how I interact with stuff. Just, like, the phone that we all have has been the same phone for really long, no matter how much, like, Apple does a big, like, brouhaha around the release of whatever, is like that they're really scraping to try and figure out a new news to talk to you about. And, like, at the end of the day, it's kind of nothing. And the only reason that they can get you to care about it is because they engineer failure into their system so that you, like, have to buy another one. But, like, beyond that,
big iPhone fan here, folks. He loves the Apple ecosystem.
I mean, it's not like the Pixel's like, oh, and that works for 10 years if you leave it alone. But, like, so, like, the whole software hardware interplay is part of the reason why that happens. So, like, I get it.
Yeah.
But, like, it does, the nostalgia piece that you're talking about that remains for me is that, like, tech used to be like a physical thing you could buy, and it just hasn't been for so long now that, like, this made me remember when tech was like an object, and tech doesn't really feel that way anymore.
But I think you're touching on something interesting here that I could actually fill an entire podcast, because the more I think about it, the more I think about nostalgia as being, in some ways, consistently rooted in tech of various kinds. Like, in our modern era, you have, like, nostalgia for, the BlackBerry, the iPod, like, I think there's weird feelings of, like, loss and love for these things, but, like, you can consider the LP a technology, and people are like, oh God, that it embodies something beyond itself. And, like, I bet you there was nostalgia for plows.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, going to the Sears robot catalog and looking up your farm equipment for the next year. Totally.
Yeah, and I just think, like, it's nostalgia gets rooted in these kind of devices, because those devices and those technologies they unlock or they connect to larger parts of culture, like we just explored, right? They're vessels for all these other things, and they carry maybe our innocence about things in them. You know, when we were, that image of me hunched over the BlackBerry, unbeknownst to me, there was a whole massive shift coming that was connected to that very moment. And maybe our nostalgia is a longing for the innocence that we had in that moment, you know? Who knows? Anyways, that's our journey. I'm excited to then put you off in your direction.
Yeah.
So, Topher, we've been talking today about notifications, the impact that a notification has. And there's visual notifications, and there are audio notifications. And the brand that I want you to explore is named after a type of audible notification, and that brand is Chime.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'd like to know what's going on with Chime.
Cool. Yeah. Anything that you like? Any starting notes or anything? I can't say that I have like a lot of personal interaction
I don't really
with
know much about it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's just, you know, it's kind of like a modern financial brand. Like, it started as tech, feels more like it's banky now.
Yeah.
I just think it's really interesting to think about the world of finance as seen through a modern financial brand.
Cool. Well, if there's anyone to tell y'all about personal finance, my husband will be listening to this episode being like, bah! Like, I am. He'll consider this a little education maybe for me, because I'm not the CFO of my relationship.
I love this. So this will be. Maybe we'll have like a guest, a guest host next time.
Yeah, watch, and I'll be like, so remember when I was said like I don't know anything about Chime? Apparently, I have $200,000 on Chime, and I never knew about it. Let's hope that that's not the case, because that would really suck. Yes. Okay. Well, I'm excited, and if folks are interested in hearing me get my financial ignorance kermuppets, then you can hear me.
Kermuppets?
Yeah.
Do you mean comeuppance?
Well,
or is that what does Kermit get a comeuppance?
There's like it's a long
Miss Piggy.
internal. Yes, it's a bit of a side joke. But yes, kermuppets is the thing my friends and I have called it, because we heard somebody say it that way a long time ago. I really like when people say words wrong and have no idea. There was another one that we also say, which is we heard somebody call. They were going to say they were referring to like a large platter of food that you could eat from, like an enormous amount of food, and they called it a Smugglesburg instead of a smorgasbord.
Smugglesburg.
Yeah. So anyway, kermuppets
kind of
and
amazing,
Smugglesburg are two of my top faves. But
I mean,
oh, sorry.
That tracks. I could see that, right? So you've got like you got an iceberg size amount of,
and you're gonna take
food.
It all.
You got to just
smuggle
hide
it away.
somehow.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And if you want to hear a whole Smugglesburg of information on Chime, you join us next time on Strange Coordinates. Your hosts are Robert Balog and me, Topher Burns. If you want to know more about us, go to our website, www.weareterritorial.com. Plunk that out on your little BlackBerry. Hey, if you enjoyed this episode, do you know somebody else who would? We would deeply appreciate a recommendation. Recommendations are how new people find out about our show. And we would dearly like to reach new people, have new people join the conversation.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody. Thanks you,
everyone.
Robert Balog. And we will catch you again soon.